This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. What if comparing car insurance rates was as easy as putting on your favorite podcast? With Progressive, it is. Just visit the Progressive website to quote with all the coverages you want. You'll see Progressive's direct rate, then their tool will provide options from other companies so you can compare. All you need to do is choose the rate and coverage you like. Quote today at Progressive.com to join the over 28 million drivers who trust Progressive. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Comparison rates not available in all states or situations. Prices vary based on how you buy.
You know what it is. That's right. It's time to talk money with your money nerd and financial coach. Now, tighten those purse strings and open those ears. It's the Money Talk with Tiff podcast.
Hey everyone, I'm so excited because I have Etinosa Agbonlahor on the line, and she is here to talk to us about talking to our parents about money, which before we hit record, I'm like, that is such a difficult thing to do. Like, we don't even know how to start the conversation. So how are you today?
I'm doing well, Tiff. Thank you for having me. I'm excited for this conversation.
For sure. I mean, you wrote the book, so I'm sure you're an expert in how to get this conversation started. So let's just start there. How do we get this conversation started? What's the best entryway into talking to our parents about money?
I always tell people that it's important that they first of all prepare themselves for the conversation. So we bring a lot of baggage to money and how we relate with money, right? We've got biases, we've got money scripts. We think that the way we do money is how everybody else does money. And so it's really important to prepare yourself for the conversation before you even have the conversation. And so that might look like sitting down and reflecting on what are my money scripts, what are my biases. That's the first part. Also understanding what you want to get out of the conversation, right? It's not just a conversation about money. Are you trying to find out how well set up they are for retirement? Are you interested in what they're doing savings wise? Is there a question you're trying to understand the answer to? So know what you want to get out of the conversation specifically, and then prepare to listen, right? Part of this conversation, a bulk of it is going to be actively listening to what are your parents' goals, what are their wants and dreams, what are their ambitions, even before you get to any kind of solution or discussing actual crunchy numbers. It's going to be a lot of listening. So kind of prepare yourself for the conversation is the very first step, the big step. And then once you're in the conversation, I always tell people to start with leading with I. So I've been looking at my finances. I've been looking at like debt. I've been exploring how to add more money to the kids' savings accounts, right? Starting with that perspective of what are you doing with your money, right? Being vulnerable is going to make your parent more likely to open up and to be vulnerable with you in the conversation and to be open, amenable to whatever it is that you're curious about with regard to their finances. And then finally, I always tell people to not expect or put too much weight on the conversation. So you can start and just have a very surface level brief conversation as step one. Come again in a couple of weeks and talk about it in a couple of months. Don't put too much weight on the conversation and expect that you're only ever going to talk about money one time and then you're done. Make it a practice, make it a habit, and that's what's going to get you and your parent to a good place in terms of sharing about your finances.
Oh my gosh, you just dropped like 10 gems right there. That's all really good information. But I want to back up a little bit because you talked about just with the first gem you dropped was about knowing your own situation. So knowing your money scripts and things of that nature. But some of our listeners may not even know what money scripts are. So can we just back up a little bit and just dive into what exactly are money scripts and why that's important to get into before you start having this conversation?
Absolutely. So money scripts are sort of subconscious thoughts and feelings and beliefs we hold about money. So let me give you an example. Last year, I was hiking the Grand Canyon with a group of folks I hadn't met before. We're hiking with a company. And one of the ladies there was telling me the story of how she was a single parent. So her husband had left her and with two teenagers. So she's raising these children by herself. And at some point, one of them, they're teenagers, one of them wanted a shoe that's going to cost like $83. And she was like, absolutely not. They're teenagers, so they prevailed and she bought the pair of shoes. And she was so furious. She's like, her children now are like 20 something. They're like, in their late 20s. They're doing well. They're thriving in their careers. But she said, for this entire time, I have been furious with myself for buying this pair of shoes. And it wasn't until she was speaking with me that she realized that she had this hidden manuscript, this fear that by indulging her daughters by buying them these sorts of things, she was scared that they would, if they ever faced a situation she did where, her partner got up and just left her, they would not have the resources and the know-how to be able to survive that kind of situation because she thought she was pampering them. And so that kind of hidden manuscript she has imparting to them was, you always have to be on top of things. You must scrimp and save. You must live a small life, smaller life that you can afford to live, because you never want to be in a position where if your back is up against the wall, you don't know how to find money and make money. And so that's a manuscript. It's a hidden subconscious belief that kind of directs and informs how you interact with money.
Gotcha. And as you were talking, and I think this was in your third tip, was to just like understand other people's money scripts and things like that, right?
Absolutely. So in the same way that you bring subconscious beliefs about money that have been impacted by how you were raised and what you learned and things you've been through and survived, other people also have those beliefs, right? Some people might believe that money is abundant, it's always going to be there for me, and so they just spend money. Other people might believe that, having gone through some things, they might believe that if I don't scrimp and save, I would never have enough money. And so they go through life scrimping and saving. And there's no right or wrong way to do money. I tell people that money is a tool, right? It's like a hammer. You can't say you're good with a hammer or bad with a hammer. It's just a tool. And so because there's no right way to do money, there's no right or wrong manuscript. You just have to acknowledge that other people's beliefs about money are in the room, and that's things you might have to acknowledge in that conversation with your parents.
Yes. And I will be honest, I've had a situation where I was trying to talk to someone close to me about life insurance, and which, is a difficult conversation because they're like, "What, you trying to kill me?" I'm like, no. No. I'm like, regardless of if you were in my life or not, I'm like, I would still say you need life insurance. I tell my audience this, strangers. So I'm like, this is something that I tell people all the time. But in their mind, it's like, oh, Tiffany must be asking me about this because they want to kill me. And so then it which I know it's a chuckle now, but it's their real thought. And so then I had to realize that, people have different fears, different beliefs, different things that they have to process that really would have nothing to do with me. Like, for instance, if we're having that conversation, they start lashing out and attacking my character, really, like, oh, you're going to kill me, blah, blah, blah. I have to realize that this is not them really talking, if that makes sense. It's more their fear. It's more of their money script, whatever it is. And so that was my little, when I realized, okay, Tiffany, not everybody thinks like you. But
absolutely.
But there is another thing that you mentioned that I wanted to hit on as well. And that was when to have the conversation. So like, I know you mentioned, understand what you're trying to go for. So that can kind of dictate. And then also you mentioned that it doesn't have to be a one-shot deal. It could be over, different sessions if need be. So give me a little more about that, like timing, as far as the sessions, breaking it up. Don't think that you have to hit it all at once. How do we approach that part?
Right. In terms of timing, I think that it's important that, first of all, you're choosing a place that is comfortable for everybody, right? It's not, don't bring up this conversation at the end of a long trip when everyone is tired of each other and no one wants to talk anymore. Everyone wants to go back to their homes. That is not the right time to bring this up. Choose a day when everyone is relaxed. Maybe you're hanging out, you're having brunch, it's a family dinner, just in a space that everyone feels safe and feels comfortable. That's the first one. And then in terms of timing, there's not necessarily there are bad times to bring it up, right? When they're stressed, it's not the right time to bring it up. But if it's in a time when everyone is relaxed, everyone is open, it's like everyone is well rested, that's a good time to kind of bring up the conversation. And then while you're in the conversation itself, to your earlier point about the person who thought you were coming at them because you asked about life insurance, there are things you kind of watch out for in the conversation that helps you determine, okay, is this going well or do I need to back up? Because you don't need to solve everything in the conversation. So if you're in the conversation and you see people start to use defensive language, they start to kind of attack you verbally, or even body language, arms get folded, they start to shrink into themselves. That's a sign that, all right, let's back up a little bit. Let's talk about the garden. Let's talk about something else that they want to talk about. We don't need to push this further. This can be a conversation that evolves over a long time. And so you just want to be careful about how you're navigating that conversation and reading the signs and the body language as well.
Yes, I love how you brought up body language because most communication is nonverbal. And if you're not aware of that, then you might, like you said, continue on and keep pushing a button that you don't need to push. So
exactly.
I'm glad that you brought that up. Now, I mentioned at the beginning of the episode that you wrote a book about this. Can you give us more about your book? What can we expect from it? And maybe where we can find it?
Absolutely. So the book is called How to Talk to Your Parents About Money. It does what it says on the tin, which is teaches you how to talk to your parents and initiate the conversation. It's got questions to help you unpack your own money scripts, to recognize some behavioral biases you might be bringing into the conversation. And then because this book is supposed to be a practical guide, meaning I want you to be able to open it up, go straight to the conversation you're trying to have. It's very short, it's very actionable, and it has actual money scripts that you can use to start to conversational starters that you can use to guide the conversation, to introduce different topics like savings, insurance, debt, estate planning, and so on. So the book, How to Talk to Your Parents About Money, short, practical, actionable, you can find it on Amazon, both in the print and in the digital versions.
That is so awesome. I love how you said it's a practical guide and you can go directly to what you're looking for and get all the information, questions, how to start, conversation starters. Like, that is awesome. I can't wait to get this book myself. So with that being said, if anybody was interested in finding out more about you, your platform, where could they find you?
Yep, you can find me on my website, etinosa.com. That's etinosaa.com. I've got a little newsletter there where sometimes I talk about financial decision making. So you can find me there, join that if you're interested. You can also find me on Instagram at Real Estate with Eti, and that's Real Estate with ETI. I have a little podcast that I do for real estate investors. So if you're into that, you can find me there as well.
Yes, thank you so much. And if you're listening, I'll make sure I have all of that in the show notes for you. So don't worry if you didn't write it down. Just check out the show notes. It'll be there. Thank you so much, Etinosa, for coming on the show today and talking about this very important topic with us.
Thank you so much for having me, Tiff. I love the conversation.
All right, bye.
Thank you for listening, joining, and being a part of the Money Talk with Tiff podcast this week. You can check Tiff out every Thursday for a new Money Talk podcast. But if you just can't wait until next week, you can listen to previous podcast episodes at moneytalkwitht.com or follow Tiff on all social media platforms at Money Talk with T. Until next time, spend wise by spending less than you make. A word to the money wise is always sufficient.